Hello, everybody, and welcome to the New York State Division of Homeland Security Emergency Services Flood Mitigation Assistance SWIFT Current Fiscal Year 2024 Informational Webinar. I'm going to go through just a couple housekeeping items. So everyone should be muted when you enter. Any questions you have, you can put in the chat. And we're going to have a Q&A at the end of the webinar as time allows, but I don't foresee us really going over. And next, let's do some quick introductions. If you could put your name, title, and agency or locality in the chat box, that would be great. We'll do a little introductions on the DHSES side. My name is Beth O'Reilly. I am the Community Engagement and Mitigate New York Supervisor here at DHSES under Disaster Recovery. I also have John Wilkinson, who will be your presenter.
Good afternoon. I am John Wilkinson, the Environmental Specialist and Project Manager here in the Hazard Mitigation Unit.
And we may have some other members from DHSES within our unit attending online. I know our Chief of Hazard Mitigation Programs, Shannon Aljabi, should be joining us, so I'll just mention her. And now I will turn it over to John for the agenda.
Thanks, Beth. All right, so we're going to go over a few things here. If you have questions, again, just put them in the chat for now, and we'll be able to have a Q&A at the end. Part one is program overview. It contains general information, program goals, legislative authority, SWIFT versus FEMA details, eligible sub-applicants, and of course, cost sharing. Part two will have details on projects, including eligibility and types of projects. Okay, part three will be navigating the application process, and part four is next steps. So, all right, in the program overview, we're going to start with the general information about flood mitigation assistance and SWIFT Current. The SWIFT Current program provides funding to mitigate buildings insured through the National Flood Insurance Program to reduce risk against future flood damage. It was developed in response to frequent and extreme weather events and flood hazards associated with climate change, and also to promote hazard mitigation activities for greater resiliency, adaptation, and equity as quickly as possible. While SWIFT Current funding is under the umbrella of flood mitigation assistance, there are differences in the program eligibility. SWIFT Current goals. There are four stated goals. I won't go into all of the statements there, but they involve speedy funding, producing equitable outcomes, increasing resilience, and reducing future NFIP claims, which is a very significant part of the program. So, legislative authorities, this information is included as sort of pro forma. If you have any questions about the legislative authorities for the program, please reach out to us. It's funded through two sources, an annual appropriation and the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021. The FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Assistance Program provides FMA SWIFT Current funding after a state receives a flood-related presidential declaration disaster. SWIFT Current funding aims to reduce or eliminate risk to repetitive loss, severe repetitive loss, and substantially damaged properties that are insured under NFIP. Okay, so there's going to be a little bit of comparison between SWIFT Current and FMA. As I said, SWIFT is activated following a major disaster declaration. for a flood-related disaster event. Whereas Flood Mitigation Assistance is an annual program. So that is part of how this program is intended to be a little faster in response, or SWIFT, in that it is not held to a yearly application, but is based off disasters as they occur. So the application periods vary. There are stricter definitions of the eligible project types. They are limited to structures as opposed to larger activities for localized flood control or capability and capacity building. There are varying cost shares for NFIP insured properties based on the damages, and we'll go over those details shortly. Okay, so who is eligible to apply? For purposes of the grant submission, our group, the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, or DHSES, is referred to as the applicant. And we submit applications for municipalities and others, and they are the sub-applicants. They are normally local governments. However, tribal governments may also apply as either an applicant or as a sub-applicant. All sub-applications must be into us by Monday, February 3rd, 2025, and must be submitted in FEMA Go. So definitely reach out to us beforehand, and we'll go over some more details on that as well. Please note that individuals and businesses are not eligible to apply. However, an eligible sub-applicant, such as a community, may apply on behalf of those individuals, businesses, and nonprofit organizations. So, here is probably the most significant part of the program in a lot of people's eyes, is the SWIFT current cost share. The cost share, also known as the non-federal share or the match, is the portion of costs of a federally assisted project or program that is not borne by the federal government. The non-federal cost share may consist of cash, donated or third-party in-kind services, materials, or any combinations thereof. SWIFT current funding provides up to 100% reimbursement of eligible costs, not to exceed the awarded amount, dependent on project eligibility, which will be discussed in a later slide. The remaining non-federal match will be the responsibility of the sub-applicant, and a letter of commitment for those finances will also be required in the sub-application. Other federal funds cannot be used towards the non-federal match. So let's go over some of the numbers. For FMA-defined severe repetitive loss properties, the reimbursement rate will be 100%, or the federal cost share will be 100%. For FMA-defined repetitive loss properties, the cost share will be 90% federal. A 90% federal cost share will also apply for NFIP structures within certain census tracts. Those census tracts should have a score of not less than 0.5001 under 3 themes for social vulnerabilities. And they're listed here. There's only one remaining theme. So basically, just you'd have to go and check the CDC SVI data to confirm if that structure was eligible for the 90% federal cost share. Other properties would be eligible for up to 75% cost share. So we have a little visual representation of the cost share versus eligible property types. So this will be, we'll be sharing this slide deck with you. It will be available on our website. So if anybody wants a visual representation, this can be helpful for them. All right, so just to reiterate, the cost share, non-federal cost share can be cash, donations, third-party in-kind services, materials, or combinations thereof. State funds can be used as a match, so if that is a possibility, please contact us and we'll see if it is appropriate match for the project. Okay, get to eligible project types and key definitions for the program. So this is the information that a lot of municipalities are going to want for details as far as whether or not they qualify. Under flood mitigation assistance definitions, okay, a severe repetitive loss property is one that has 4 or more separate NFIP claims exceeding a total of $20,000, or having at least 2 separate NFIP claim payments that exceed the total market value of the structure. Repetitive loss is defined under FMA as a structure with flood-related damage where the average cost of repairs equals or exceeds 25% of the market value of the structure at the time of the flood event, and the insurance contract contains increased cost of compliance coverage, at the time of the second event. And there's slightly different definitions under NFIP. NFIP defines SRL properties basically the same as FMA, 4 or more separate NFIP building and content claim payments of more than $5,000 each, or 2 or more separate building claim payments that in total exceed the current market value of the property. Repetitive loss properties are those that have had flood damage on 2 occasions within a 10-year period, resulting in claim payments of $1,000 or more. So it's more likely that several properties will be meeting that criteria. Substantially damaged properties are either located in a special flood hazard area or a floodplain that sustained damage where the total cost of repairs is greater than or equal to 50% of the structure's market value prior to the disaster. And substantial damage can be a little bit difficult to determine, but there are some tools provided that will help you. We have it in our Notice of Funding of Opportunity, and links regarding that are also found on our website. Okay, so the program does have some eligibility requirements that are a little bit stricter than some programs. All sub-applicants must participate in the NFIP program. They can't be on probation or suspended. All the structures in the sub-applications must be insured under NFIP before, during, and after the mitigation. So that means you can't go out and get a policy now. I would recommend getting an NFIP policy for any properties that are prone to flooding, but it's not going to help apply for this program right now. All the structures must be defined as severe repetitive loss, or substantially damaged. Structures listed in the sub-application must maintain a policy, an NFIP policy, for the life of the structure, regardless of the flood zone, if an elevation or mitigation reconstruction project is undertaken. For acquisitions and demolitions, they must have a policy in effect at the start date, and it must be maintained until the transfer of property where it becomes green space, regardless of the flood zone designation. Okay. In addition, all mitigation projects must be feasible. They must be cost-effective according to FEMA's benefit cost analysis. They must include a BCA containing all the backup and supporting documentation. They must solve a problem independently or constitute a functional portion of a long-term solution where there's an assurance the whole project will be completed. They must address a problem that's been repetitive or poses a risk to public health and safety. And they must account for long-term changes to the areas, especially in the case of acquisitions. There must have manageable future maintenance and modification requirements. Eligible activities. There are several project types that are eligible under this program. These include structure elevations, acquisitions and structure demolition or relocation, dry flood proofing, but only of historic residential or non-residential buildings, non-structural and structural retrofitting of existing buildings, and mitigation reconstruction. And again, the eligible project buildings are severe repetitive loss, and substantially damaged properties. Okay, so let's talk about elevations. FEMA may pay to elevate a structure through a variety of elevation methods. Buildings proposed for structure elevation must be structurally sound and capable of being elevated safely. A report of an inspection completed by a qualified professional, such as a licensed engineer or architect or a qualified local building code official, may be used to document structural soundness. Good. Okay. We're going to go for review of the requirements for buyouts or property acquisitions. This states, and demolition, we don't really see too many relocations, but that is a potential as well. So FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program and this program offer construction buyout projects for eligible applicants. The property owner must voluntarily agree to participate in the program, both elevations and buyouts. Types of eligible mitigation buyout projects include flood-prone structures along underlying land, which is converted to open space. Now, for acquisitions in the special flood hazard area, you can use a pre-calculated benefit cost analysis. The pre-calculated benefit cost analysis has been raised recently, so a lot more structures should be able to qualify under the BCA, the pre-calculated BCA. If you are not in the special flood hazard area, you will have to do a regular BCA. Okay. What's next? Dry flood proofing. Dry flood proofing, again, has limited uses as far as historic residential structures. And by historic, we mean listed on or having the potential to be listed on a state or national register of historic places. Non-residential structures can be dry flood proofed as well. That's typically commercial structures and public buildings. Dry flood proofing projects are techniques that are applied to keep structures dry by sealing the structure and keeping floodwaters out. It is not permitted in the coastal V zone. And structural retrofitting, also somewhat underutilized in some ways. Structural retrofitting is the modification of structural elements of a building to reduce or eliminate the risk of future damage and to protect the inhabitants. Non-structural retrofitting are non-structural elements of a building or a facility that are mitigated to reduce or eliminate the risk of future damage. An example of that might be bracing of building contents to prevent earthquake damage. So you can imagine something similar, retrofitting to raise electrical outlets, retrofitting to raise utilities and get them out of flood-prone basements, things like that. That's a very popular request. So that's definitely something to consider if you don't think you have the resources for a larger flood-proofing project. So now we're going to get into the application process. As stated earlier, all sub-applicants must apply for funding using FEMA's Grant Outcomes or FEMA Go at the FEMA Go portal. You can visit FEMA Go for hazard mitigation grants to view the technical user manuals and support materials. We currently, At least one person has tried to apply and wasn't able to on FEMA Go, so we'll be resolving that with FEMA tomorrow. If you also have any problems, please let us know, and we will get right back to you. We do want to make sure that all the sub-applications have a chance to get in, and we have a chance to review them, all right?
And all of our contact information will be included at the end of the presentation.
Okay, so there's a little guidance, our SWIFT current application best practices. Please submit thorough and complete sub-applications. If you have any questions in the process, you can reach out to us. Be clear and consistent in your naming conventions for attachments. So if it's a photo, say photo, view, whatever, this direction, this property. Same with maps. It's very difficult to determine which maps you're providing us, and it will make FEMA's review of your sub-application a lot easier. Please provide a detailed scope of work. Provide relevant supporting documentation, such as engineering studies if you have them. Use clear, consistent, and relevant data. It's sometimes tempting to include a whole lot of information. We need the relevant information, and it needs to be legible and consistent. So please don't include inaccurate information or forget to attach key documents. Please make sure to connect the flooding to the project in a way that is clear. So we want to be able to demonstrate why you are doing this. If you have historical damage accounts, that's also incredibly useful. And be clear about the level of protection that you want for your project. I think that covers that. Yeah. All right. So allowable costs. A lot of people ask about pre-award costs. Pre-award costs are available. They are designated as management costs and count towards the management cost 5% limit of total project costs. Pre-award costs can be identified as part of the non-federal cost share. Pre-award costs include things like developing the application, gathering environmental reviews, developing the VCA, conducting workshops and meetings, and management costs are basically used for administration of the grant. They are also referred to as indirect costs. The cost share, now it's a little bit different under this program. Cost share is typically 100% under HMGP. For SWIFT current, cost share for management costs will be based on whatever the project cost share calculation is. So if it's a 100% reimbursement, cost shares will be 100%, 90%, cost shares will be 90%, and so on. Management costs have to be added to the scope of work section and identified in the budget with the sub-application. Okay, the all-important benefit cost analysis. To evaluate proposed hazard mitigation projects, FEMA requires a benefit cost analysis to validate the cost effectiveness. The project's total net benefits are divided by project cost. That's called the benefit cost ratio. A ratio better than 1.0 is considered cost effective. You must use FEMA's methodologies and use the guidance from their toolkit, which has a link here, and we also have links in our notice of funding and on the website. Okay, one thing to know is the total net benefits is the summation of the calculated annualized damages of all direct damage categories. The total project cost is the initial project cost value, plus the annual maintenance costs. This is important, especially for acquisition projects. where the future maintenance costs are discounted so the present value is used in the calculation. If you need help with this, we'll be available. FEMA will be available. FEMA has offered a number of supports for Swift Current and has been extremely responsive. So, as stated here, to effectively complete the BCA, we will need all project costs, the useful life of the project, the maintenance cost, the age of the structure being mitigated. That's often kind of hard to track down for public buildings especially, but it is very important, especially for structures older than 50 years old, where the project is located, the address, and the GPS coordinates, ideally, the historical damages before mitigation, if available, which includes recurrence intervals, and the expected level of protection after the mitigation. Expected damages before and after mitigation, these are the avoided losses that are documented in the benefit cost analysis, and any other documentation to justify the non-default inputs. Best practices for benefit cost analysis: make sure there's a detailed narrative. Make sure you list the additional project alternatives. Sometimes the cost of those alternatives will substantiate where you're going with the project application. Make sure to include impacts from historical events or a good description of those damages. And provide copies of your relevant supporting documentation, such as engineering plans, studies, and as always, maps and photos. A lot of times we have, people say the property floods all the time, but there's no photos. So those are very helpful if you do have them. Okay, mitigation actions that address multiple hazards may provide greater benefits. Mitigation actions that reduce risk to critical facilities will provide greater benefits as well. If a non-default value is used in the toolkit, you should enter a couple of sentences in the comment box and include some supporting documentation with your application. BCA comments should also cite the file name and the page section referred to as appropriate. And of course, like all things, there's some common pitfalls. So again, please look out for a lack of supporting documentation. Please do not put in assumptions that are unjustified or undocumented. Most mitigation projects will still have some level of residual damage, so be sure to include that in your analysis, with the exception of acquisition projects, since the asset on those is completely removed from the floodplain. Another pitfall is when it's unclear if the project is a standalone solution. So the premise of a standalone solution, per 44 CFR guidance, is that they solve the problem independently or constitute a functional part of the solution where there's an assurance the project as a whole will be completed. Projects that merely identify or analyze hazards or problems are not eligible. And another thing that is often overlooked is supporting documentation for upstream and downstream impacts. Okay, so we're going to get into our next steps. Oh boy, all right. And we're stepping on up here. So the application review process, we have had some questions about this. Our sub-applications are reviewed based on project eligibility, feasibility, and other relevant data, are submitted to FEMA on a rolling first come, first served basis. Now, this time, usually we submit a request for information before you get a request for information from FEMA. However, with this process, we are going to ask you to submit as complete a sub-application as possible in FEMA Go. These sub-applications are more likely to be approved in an expeditious manner, resulting in more immediate positive impacts for the communities. Eligible sub-applications are due to us by February 3rd of next year. If you have questions on the sub-applications, please contact us. We could probably still, we may not have, there's some questions about how complicated the RFI process is going to be on our side, but we will do everything we can to help you in the application process. However, there will be no extensions or exceptions to the RFI deadlines. And lastly, we have here a number of additional resources and information for your use. There's several links to FEMA websites and FEMA's resources. There's our HMA program guidance. There's the CDC website for SBI data and FEMA Go support. A couple of job aids on the side, and there are more of them on our website. So please, I encourage you to review that as soon as you have a chance. That wraps things up. And let's see if we have any questions in the chat. Not as of yet. Okay. Any questions?
Not seeing any questions in the chat. You can raise your hand if you have a question that you'd like to ask over the air, and we can unmute you on our end. Oh, Linda Phillips has a question. Where local municipality with NFIP damage claims notified directly? I'm assuming you're asking if local municipalities with those damage claims were notified of this funding. This was sent out to all of our known DHSES county contacts, as well as blasted out through the Watch Center to emergency managers. It is expected that emergency managers and county managers are aware of their own claims. However, if you have any questions about that, they can always reach out to us and we can assist with them with getting their information on whether or not they have eligible properties within their municipality.
Oh, and I would like to add, like all of our programs, you need to have a current and you need to have a hazard mitigation plan in effect. It needs to be approved and adopted before the application is approved.
So yes, that is correct. If you, your municipality not only has to participate in the local hazard mitigation plan, but also has to be non-expired. So if the plan is currently expired, obviously you can go ahead and apply for funding, but do know that it may affect your eligibility to be considered for funding. And I would recommend reaching out to your county contacts, or you can contact DHSES to see if you, if your town or village has adopted the local hazard mitigation plan or what the mitigation plan status is. You can also see the status of your local hazard mitigation plan, not only on FEMA's website, but on Mitigate New York. Susan has, Susan, you raised your hand, so I'm going to unmute you. And go ahead, Susan. Oh, she disappeared. Okay. Susan, you're unmuted. Did you have a question? Yeah, okay. Back to muting.
Put my contact info in here.
Yeah, why don't we put that right in the chat? So John's gonna put his contact info right in the chat. I'm gonna be sending out a copy of these slides to all the participants. If nobody has any other questions, we'll stay on the, you're free to leave. We'll stay on for, I would say, about 10 more minutes.
At least a few.
Yeah, to give people the opportunity to ask questions. Otherwise, thank you for attending and have a great day. I'm going to throw the generic email too in there. Linda Phillips says, can you tell me where there are local properties in Ontario County that are eligible?
Sorry, we don't actually have that information, but you can request it from FEMA through what they call the information sharing agreements. They will get processed in less than 10 days, and there is information about that also on our website and in our Notice of Funding Opportunities.
And if you wanted, Linda, you can shoot an email to the hazard mitigation email, and we can reiterate that for you. You're welcome. Yeah, we don't have direct access to the properties that are eligible, but we can kind of point you in the right direction. Well, that being said, with what it looks like mostly just DHSES employees on the line, we're going to end this. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a good day.
Thanks, folks.